Section 8.2 should be complete review for you. It's just the quadratic formula. Some of you know a little song about it. But the first thing we need to do, and if you come and sing the song to me, I'll give you extra credit. The formula comes from the quadratic form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And now, to solve for x, when it doesn't factor nicely and we don't want to graph it, there is a formula that is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Take a moment, get that written down. And now this formula is derived from this formula. And that very well could be the bonus question on your next test, is how do you derive the quadratic formula from this? And actually you use the method of completing the square, which is what we are going to go over in class from section 8.1. So, first example, 5x squared plus 8x equals negative 3. Well, the first thing we need to do is make sure that it all equals 0 and all our terms are on the left. So I'm going to move the 3 over, add 3 to both sides, and set that equal to 0. Now we need to make sure we know our terms. A is 5, B is 8, and C is 3. If there happened to have been a negative in front of any of these, it goes with that. If this was negative 5x squared, A would be negative 5. If it was minus 8x, B would be negative 8. So now let's plug them in. X equals negative B, so B is 8. So we have negative 8 plus or minus the square root of B squared, 8 squared minus 4 times A is 5 times C is 3. If you're not freshened up on this, take a minute and watch this a couple times. Over 2 times A is 5. So now I start simplifying. I know I have negative 8 plus or minus square root. 8 squared is 64. And I have 4 times 5 is 20. Times 3 is 60, so I have minus 60 all over 2 times 5 is 10. So 64 minus 60 is square root of 4 over 10. Everything else stays the same each time. Square root of 4, as we all know, is 2. And now here's where you have to split them into two separate problems, because we've got the plus and the minus. So up here we have negative 8 plus 2 over 10. And down here we have negative 8 minus 2 over 10. And that will remind us we have to have two solutions because it was a quadratic. This exponent from the very beginning told us it would have two solutions. So negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6 over 10 is negative 3/5 reduced. Negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10 over 10, which is negative 1. So our two solutions are negative 1 and negative 3/2. So take a moment and get that written down. Another way they will word asking the same question is they'll say find all the x's so that f of x equals 0. Well, remember, f of x is just y. And if f of x is 3x squared minus 6x minus 4, then all we do is just change f of x to 0 equals 3x squared minus 6x minus 4. So as a refresher, A is 3, B is negative 6, and C is negative 4. This is the one you're going to try on your own, and I will check it. Sometimes they won't look like they belong to the form ax squared plus bx plus c, like something like this problem. So we need to make it look like that first. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute on the left and the right start to simplify, I'm going to move everything over to one side, and then I'll be able to use the quadratic formula. So I have x squared plus 5x, try this, pause it if you want, equals 4x minus 2. So I'm going to minus 4x from both sides, move that over. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. It's a little messy, but if you followed along, x squared, 5x minus 4x is plus x plus 2 equals 0. Now we are able to use the quadratic formula from here. So take a moment, go ahead and try setting up the quadratic formula. Please pause. Okay, so a is 1, b is 1, c is 2. So negative b is negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2 all over 2a, 2 times 1. 1 squared is 1, 4 times 1 times 2 is 8, so 1 minus 8 is negative 7, all over 2. Here's where we have the square root of a negative. So these solutions aren't real, they are imaginary. So we have negative 1 plus or minus, square root of negative 7, like we said before, is the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 7. And the square root of negative 1 is I, and the square root of 7 is square root of 7. So I rad 7 all over 2. And if you recall, these have to be in the form a plus bi, so my denominator is going to go both places. So I have negative 1/2 plus or minus, and I'm going to make square root of 7 over 2 my fraction times I. And that I is clearly not part of this radical when it's next to the whole fraction. But remember the form a plus bi, a is negative 1/2 and b is positive or negative rad 7 over 2. So get used to that. So now something to remember, here's two solutions that were imaginary. On example number 1, let's look back at example number 1, we have two solutions that are real. So if we graphed these, it'd be at negative 1 and negative 3/5. So somewhere here and here, say. It doesn't matter, but I know my parabola looks something like that because I have two solutions. Sometimes you only have one solution. If you have one solution, say the point right here, say that's point 1, then your parabola could look like this, or it could open down and look like that. Here we have two imaginary solutions, so think about what that would look like. Imaginary means you can't see where they cross the axis, which means they don't cross the axis. So it could be something like this or that. A parabola that never touches the axis, because the point of this quadratic formula is to find what x equals. And x is on this x-axis, and it finds where the graph crosses the x-axis. So please go ahead and go back and finish problem number 2. I will be checking for completion of that. And that is the end of 8.2.